Hello everyone, this coding is a color guessing game with JavaScript. So this game where the player will see a single RGB value for a color and the player has to click on a color they think matches the RGB value displayed. Okay, so as you can see, the HTML head head is section contains the title of the game, which is the color game, and the body is the game element and structure. As you can see here, the heading one is the game displaying message and selecting difficulty modes. As you can see, there's an easy and hard. Okay, so followed by the div id container, which is holds the square where the colors will be displayed. And next one is the script. The script tag is included at the end to load the JavaScript code that handle the game logic. So next one is the CSS. So in the body of the CSS provides style for various elements in the game such as the background color, font family, font size, margin, and padding. So as you can see here, the background color is the code 232323, where the font family is the railway where they use the font sans serif and the font size is 62.5. And lastly is the margin, which is 0. Next one is the container, sets the maximum width, and the maximum width here is 600 pixel and the margin is 0 and the padding top is 20 pixel. So let's proceed to the H1. These are the elements of H1. The color background color, font size, text align, text transform, margin, and padding. The color display, which is the display and the font size, and these are the elements of the stripe. And lastly, the message, which contains the text transform and uppercase, color, font size, display, and width.
So now let's proceed to the JavaScript code. So in this, the codes handles the game logic and interactively. So variables are declared to store the number of squares, colors, and peak colors there and reference to various DOM elements. So the first one is the init. So the function of this is this is called to initialize the game by setting up the squares, difficulty, modes, and resetting the game. So the next one is the reset button. So this is to assign a click event listener to call the reset function were clicked. So the next one is the reset um, squares. So this function of this is when a square is clicked, it compares the click color with the peak color. If they matches, the player will wins and um, the color of the squares and the header are changed. Otherwise, the player is prompted to try again. So the next one is the setup mode. So function of assigns a click event to listener. Each difficulty mode button. When a mode button is clicked, the selected mode is highlighted and the number of squares is updated accordingly. So the game is then reset. So the next one is the reset. So the reset is generates the new random colors, picks a new colors, updates the displays, resets the header and the button text, and shows or hides the squares based on the difficulty mode. So now let's proceed to the change colors. So function is to update the colors of the squares and the headers of the specified color. So the next one is the change color. So the choose colors is the function of this is randomly selected of colors from available colors. So next is the um, gen random colors. Um, what's up? So the gen random colors is the function of this is to generate an array of random colors based on the given numbers. So next is the make color. So the function of this is to generate a random RGB colors string. So overall, this code setups the structures and stylings of the color guessing game using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Good day, everyone. So this coding is entitled JavaScript to-do list. So it is a wonderful tool for coding dynamic interactive lists where users can add, edit, delete, and move items. So it is something that you cannot achieve with just HTML and CSS. So these HTML codes, it represents the structure of the to-do list application, and it consists of a container div with the ID tasker and various nested elements within it. So here's a breakdown of the HTML structure. So first is the div ID tasker, class tasker. This is the main container for the to-do list. And then the div ID tasker header. No, So this div ID tasker is the main container for the to-do list. And then the div ID error class error, this div is initially hidden and it is used to display an error message when a task is added without any input. So here you place the please enter a task. And then this div ID tasker header, um, it contains the header section of the to-do list, which includes an input field and an add button. So as you can see here, you have here the input and then the add button. And then input type text ID input as placeholder and then enter a task. So here, enter a task and it will show here in the coding in the body section. And then this add button is represented by a plus icon from the font awesome library. Then this ULID task or the unordered list ID task, it is an ordered list element that will contain the individual tasks as list items. So, and you have to close the HTML elements. So that's the overall structure of the HTML codes. So now let's proceed to the CSS code. So the CSS codes defines the styles and layout for the to-do list application. It uses a combination of the regular CSS and the SCSS syntax. And here are the key parts of the CSS. So these are the variables. The CSS codes defines three variables, the primary, gray, and secondary. So these are used to define colors in the code.
So the percent reset and the percent transition. So these are the placeholder selectors that defined using the SCSS syntax and are later extended to other selectors. So as you can see here, reset is the margin 0, the padding is 0, the border none, outline none, and the background is transparent. So there is no border as you can see in the body section here. There is no padding, there is no border, also the outline, and the background is just transparent. So the transition is all 0.2 seconds and it is. And then the transition, the WebKit transition is all 0.2 is. And then here the body background is transparent, then and then the margin for the top is 2. And then for the tasker, if you input here, um, example is cooking. So the max width is 400 pixels, the margin is 0, and then there is no display, then the background is RGBA, and then the color code. So these are the styles for various elements. So these are in the CSS codes, these are just the styles for various elements. So these CSS codes just contains the styles for the different parts of the to-do list, including the main container, the error message, the input fields, buttons, and the tasks. So now let's proceed to the JavaScript code. So the JavaScript code adds interactivity to the to-do list application. It defines an object named tasker with several methods. So let's look at each method and its purpose. So the init, it initializes the to-do list application by caching DOM or the document object model elements, binding events, and evaluating the task list. So that is the function of the JavaScript code. So here, the init function, the cache DOM, the bind events, and then the evaluation task list, to evaluate if the task list is functioning. So the cache DOM, the cache frequently use DOM or the document object model elements to avoid querying the DOM repeatedly. So next is the binding events or bind events. So the bind events function, it binds clicks and key press events to the relevant elements. It also add button and input field. So here example, cooking, jogging, dancing. So you can add button and the input field in the bind events. So now let's proceed to the eval task list function. So the function of this it evaluates the task list by binding click events to check boxes and delete buttons of each task. So let's evaluate if it can be check or delete. So here you can check or you can also delete. So next is render. So the render function, it creates a new task items by dynamically generating the required HTML elements and appending them to the task list. So we have here render function, and then we have here the complete task function and then the incomplete task function. So you can check the box if you already completed the task, and for the incomplete task function, um, so next is the enter key function. So the enter key functions, it handles the events when the enter key is pressed, triggering the addition of a task. So if you enter another task, you enter it and it will show here in the list. So that is the function of the enter key. So next is the add task. The add task function is to add new tasks to the task list. It validates the input, the displays an error message if necessary, and update the task list. So here. So we already example the add task. You can add task here. You enter the task and you enter the key. Next is the del task. So the function of the del task, it deletes a task from the task list based on its index. So we can delete it on the list of your task. Okay, let's delete the, we already delete the cooking task. So next is the error. So the error function, the function of the error is to display the error message when a task is added without any input. So we will have an error if you don't have input here in the task. So if there is no input, it cannot add any task. So that is the overall for the JavaScript code. So also we have a JavaScript codes also includes the function which encapsulates the scope and prevents variables to conflicts with other scripts. So overall, this code creates a functional to-do list application that allows users to add tasks, mark them as completed, and delete tasks. So the HTML defines the structures and the CSS provides the visual styles and the JavaScript. So that would be all for the to-do list plain JavaScript. Thank you so much for listening.